Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very, very exciting segment here today on the 9th of the 11th. So 9/11, not the 9/11, because this is on the other side of the world where we have the day first and the month later one. Well, right now we'll get on with the news for today. Well, of course, yesterday was that big blood moon, and did you get a chance to watch it? It was just amazing. Here's the report.
The moon pulled off a disappearing act, and if you were lucky enough to catch it, if you had clear skies, what you saw was a total lunar eclipse, one that we will not set sight on again for another 3 years. To tell us more about the blood moon, I am delighted to be joined by astrophysicist Kirsten Banks. G'day, Kirsten. Hey, you stayed up for it, right?
I did, and the fact that you guys asked me to come in at 6:40 in the morning is a little bit upsetting.
Sorry, but we need your insight because we don't get to see this kind of stuff all the time. Not quite as impressive, perhaps, for some people as a solar eclipse, but this is still pretty cool.
It is still very, very cool, and I find it's much more accessible as an eclipse compared to a solar eclipse, because at least with solar eclipses you definitely cannot look at it outside of totality, but with a lunar eclipse you can look at it with your eyes without any sort of special equipment. All you need are your eyeballs. And my goodness, last night, thank goodness the clouds stayed away in Sydney because it put on an absolute show. I had so much fun with my friends coming down to the waterfront in Balmain to watch the moonrise above the cityscape, and it was just gorgeous. We even had some fairy friends on 4 legs come and enjoy the moon as well.
Oh, that sounds like the perfect night. Hey, so tell us, what's going on? Because normally when it's a solar eclipse, the sun disappears, but you could still see the moon. It was just kind of a really reddish colour.
Absolutely. So what's happened here is you've got the sun, earth and the moon all in a perfect line, and so the moon is moving into the earth's shadow, but it's not completely blocked from all sunlight. Some of the sunlight still gets through by being bent through our atmosphere first, scattering out most of the blue light, leaving behind mostly red light to then fall onto the moon. So what you're seeing on a lunar eclipse is actually all of the Earth's sunrises and sunsets simultaneously falling on the moon.
Such a beautiful image. Hey, why will it take 3 years for us to see another one? Is it that the moon doesn't quite go around the Earth in the same plane as we're going around the sun?
Exactly. The tilt of the moon's orbit is a little bit off from where the shadow is. So not every full moon is going to fall into the shadow. Usually we get around 1 or 2 lunar eclipses a year on average, but unfortunately with averages that means sometimes we have some off years, and this time we're not going to have a total lunar eclipse until March 2025.
Oh, well, my birthday's in March, so fingers crossed we'll be able to see it from Australia.
Hopefully.
There you are. You've got all the info on that. But right now, I'd like to show you what Brisbane saw. What was the scene like right here in Brisbane? Let's see if we can get to Bob's page and see what it looks like. So there you are. These photos are the courtesy of Bob McGann, and of course a good friend of ours, and he was up at Mount Coot-tha yesterday. So these are the wonderful shots from there, and we've got his permission to use these shots. That's amazing. He's just a wonderful photographer. And this is what Brisbane saw from Mount Coot-tha yesterday. And look at that picture. That's just amazing, isn't it? Bob, you've done a wonderful job. He has taken them as it went. One of his comments was, he thought there'd be more professional photographers up there. But there were people and there were photographers, but he couldn't see many of the professional ones there as well. But, people did come out in great numbers. So that's it. These are the beautiful shots all the way from Mount Coot-tha by Bob McGann, and he is just a wonderful photographer. So these are the scenes right here from Brisbane, and isn't that just wonderful what he has managed to capture? And look at that, the full bloom, and this is it. It doesn't get better than this. And Bob, thank you so much for doing this. This is just wonderful. And he says, my pics, it wasn't behind the cloud, but the lack of light makes them blurry, is what he says about the photo. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, wonderful, and thanks very much to Bob for those photographs. Right now, let's keep moving on with the news. And next up, we're going to look at what is looming once again, the Treasury, and how it is recommending that there be an intervention into the energy market.
A fortnight since the Treasurer used budget night to warn energy companies of
regulatory interventions.
Patience is wearing thin.
Just give us a sec.
You're going to have to move fast. We don't have time available to us.
The Australian Workers' Union deeply concerned that if gas prices aren't brought down urgently, there'll be big job losses in the manufacturing sector.
The prices that are being offered to them are extraordinary. Some of the companies have the best offer offered to them from a bank.
The ABC has agreed not to name one New South Wales steelmaking company, but has confirmed it was recently offered a 12-month gas contract from Macquarie Group for $33 a gigajoule. The next best offer, $35 from Origin Energy, followed by $46 from Shell. The company currently pays less than $10 a gigajoule. Its annual gas bill to rise by at least $25 million.
Why are businesses having to pay for the Prime Minister's broken promise to cut power prices?
We will not be standing by and watching the prices of coal and gas just flow through to Australian industries and households.
Federal Treasury advising the government to pursue temporary price controls that don't worsen inflation.
That interventions that directly address the higher domestic thermal coal and gas prices are more likely to be optimal.
In other words, Treasury doesn't want the government to compensate households directly for higher power bills, recommending instead a form of price cap on both gas and coal while the energy shock persists. That would ease pressure on families and businesses, but potentially unnerve Australia's trading partners, perhaps explaining why Resources Minister Madeleine King will be dispatched to Tokyo on the weekend. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
Well, there you go, from those beautiful photos from Bob to this energy prices and the energy crisis. Hey, look, in the world, every day and day in, day out, there is the need for energy. And the supply and the source of energy has been varied from time as we've come along, to the coal fire, to the steam, to the gas now is under fire at this point in time, as we are all looking towards renewable, which is wind and, of course, solar. But regardless of the source, we always have to rely on this energy to power up so many things that we just taken for granted. We don't even think about where it's coming from, flick the switch and things must happen. So, there's always been this, but whenever you disturb a natural phenomenon, anything that's natural, there is going to be action and reaction. So there will be side effects. Many side effects might be not even known yet, not even discovered yet. But whenever you change anything that's natural, there will be some consequences down the road. Well, right now, hackers, and this is getting beyond the joke these days. There's so many hackers and so many different things that are at threat, and this is the information age. Everyone collects so much information, has so much data. We, even within our organization, have been dealing with so many different, events and functions. So we have collected over the years so many photographs, footages, and press releases of so many functions and events which we like to keep. But, are those things vulnerable? Well, they might not be, and it might not be as sensitive as someone's personal information. So that is always a threat. As we know, there have been identity threats and those kind of things. So here's a report to the hijackers as they threaten to release the data.
Medibank customer Mahit Gajda is worried his sensitive medical data could be published by criminals at any moment.
I don't want anyone to know what diseases I had or what doctors I've been to. I don't even want my phone numbers to be leaked so that some random person can actually call me or scam me.
Around midnight on the dark web, a statement appeared believed to be posted by the hacker. A man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake. It references a quote by the Chinese philosopher Confucius. The statement goes on to say data will be published in 24 hours. P.S. I recommend sell Medibank stocks.
Quite possibly there's a link back to Russia. A lot of these ransom attacks do come from Russia, so it's all sounding very plausible. But of course, as with everything on the dark web, it's layer within layer. We can't know anything for sure.
But it's certainly not as bad.
Market analysts say the hackers could be trying to force down the company's share price by what's known as short selling.
Basically, in its purest form, it is selling a share you don't own to buy it back at a cheaper price in the future to profit from the difference in those two prices.
The hack has already wiped around $2.5 billion off the value of Medibank.
It's a way of actually making more money than the ransom sometimes, working on the derivative markets, on the share market.
This is, I guess, the equivalent of a bank robbery to some extent, in that the thieves have gone into the vault and stolen the loot from the bank. So a lot of companies will be on very much high alert.
Medibank is also facing the threat of a class action. Two law firms have announced they've joined forces to investigate the hack, while the AFP has delivered a warning to corporate Australia.
Today, I have a message to business. Please alert authorities immediately when a data breach is suspected.
A message that does little to help victims like Mohik. Rihanna Whitson, ABC News.
Well, of course, he's not the only one. There's many people whose information, could be at the risk of being released out to people. So, right now, our next news, emergency crews tend to aircraft as it's reported having flames near the tires. And from that news, right now we go to the flood fatigue Moana residents after these 3 weeks of disaster.
The spotlight may have shifted from Moama recently, but flooding remains a part of everyday life here.
You try and be as strong as possible for the family and as stable as possible, but we just don't know the damage we're faced with, the financial ruin.
Fleur Ferris's wheat crop is underwater, but her house was spared.
We were hoping that that would mean that soon we would get back in, but we've been told it could be another 6 weeks before all the water's come down and it's stable enough to allow us in.
The SES says it's continuing to monitor the impact of releases from the Hume Dam.
So we're seeing that water flow down through the Murray over the last few days through the Corowa, and we'll continue to see that go through.
Local health officials are conscious of the impact of flooding on people's mental health.
When it's on the back of a global pandemic and there's layers of stress that's been associated there, that we know that can prolong the recovery period for any new...
Higher waters and for longer. That's the new flood forecast for South Australia, abruptly ending the busiest season for River Murray houseboat operators.
We basically went from trading, quite busy, turning over a lot of money every week, to just nothing. We cannot operate, so stop dead in the water.
Peak river flow predictions have been increased from 135 to 150 gigalitres a day. There's still a risk it could hit 180 gigalitres, and it's now expected to stay high through January and into February.
That puts us closer to that 1975, 1976 level, but still well short of what we saw occurred in 1956.
The Premier taking to the sky.
Now, they say it's still way short of the targets, but right now let's go to Western Australia, where they have been called to close the youth detention centre.
Well, these calls today are coming from a former president of WA's Children's Court as well as a former inspector of custodial services. They've described the current situation in WA's juvenile justice system as a disaster, saying it doesn't help rehabilitate young offenders. And a big part of that issue, they say, is that the state really only has one juvenile detention facility in Banksia Hill, and that means it houses a wide array of people, young people, teenagers who are on the cusp of entering the adult justice system, young girls, young boys, all mixing together and creating a very difficult situation. Their other concern...
So it is rather concerning, but we'll have to wait and see as to what happens. Look, these detention centres are needed. correctional, services and correctional activities, to curb all this is needed as well. But the control and when do we release these people out into the community is another one. Well, right now there is a bit of a concern about China's defense personnel and private police presence in Australia.
Last month there were reports that China had approached former Australian defence personnel to provide training to Chinese. There are enough concerns in my mind that I have asked Defence to engage in a detailed examination about the policies and procedures that apply to our former defence personnel, and particularly those who come into possession of our nation's secrets. For those who do come into possession,
there is a little bit of a concern, even though IFP is unconcerned by the reports of Chinese overseas police presence. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and more on India and the Indian diaspora. At a time when India is walking a diplomatic tightrope between Russia and US-led Western countries on the issue of the Ukraine conflict, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's two-day visit to Russia holds special significance. Jaishankar is said to hold strategic discussion with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov during the visit.
The world is wondering whether India could offer to broker peace on the Ukraine conflict that has not only once again polarized the world, but the war has already worsened the global recession post the COVID pandemic. India's geopolitical stature is growing and so also its economy. Against this backdrop, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar reached Moscow on November 7th on a much-watched and highly anticipated two-day visit to Russia. Jaishankar's talks with Sergei Lavrov are expected to go beyond the usual and important range of bilateral issues, and the two are expected to exchange views on various regional and international developments. Topping the regional and global agenda is the unending and perhaps escalating Russian war with Ukraine. It has pitched US-led Western world against Russia. It has also placed India in an uncomfortable though anticipated position of condemning war, but not castigating Russia openly or during voting on the war in the United Nations. Some feel India is a difficult spot. Some others feel, and many analysts agree, that India seems the only available mediator, potentially to talk to Russia and even the West. On the bilateral and global issues, Jaishankar will discuss the prospective energy projects on the Arctic shelf. The Russian Foreign Ministry also said that the Asia-Pacific security architecture will be among the main topics of discussion. The Indian External Affairs Minister is also expected to meet Russian Deputy Prime Minister. Dr. Jaishankar will also meet Minister of Trade and Industry Denis Manturov to discuss the economic cooperation between both countries. The key areas of cooperation with India are the further intensification of the political dialogue in a bilateral format and on international platforms, promotion of economic, financial, energy, military, technical, humanitarian, scientific and technical cooperation. The visit is also significant as it comes a few days ahead of the G20 summit in Bali, scheduled for November 15th and 16th. India takes over as president of G20 and will determine the agenda of a crucial G20 summit of country leaders at the time of growing global conflicts and polarization. Ahead of the visit, the Russian Foreign Ministry noted with emphasis that Russia and India stand for the active form of a more just and equal polycentric world order, adding that the shared thoughts include inadmissibility of promoting the imperialist diktat on the global arena.
Several Congress leaders have joined the Bharatiya Janata Party just days ahead of the polling date in the northern state of Himachal Pradesh in India.
In a huge setback for the Indian National Congress in the poll-bound state of Himachal Pradesh, several Congress leaders joined the Bharatiya Janata Party on November 7 in the presence of Chief Minister Jairam Thakur. Welcoming the leaders, the Himachal CM tweeted in Hindi code, "Customs are changing. Today, many colleagues, including former office bearers of Congress Party of Shimla, left the Congress Party and joined the BJP. Warm welcome to all of you in the BJP family. Let us work in solidarity for the historic victory of BJP." End quote. A total of 26 Congress leaders have joined the ruling BJP, which includes former Congress General Secretary Dharampal Thakur, former Secretary Akash Saini, former councillor Rajan Thakur and former district vice president Amit Mehta among others. The state which goes to the polls on November 12th has a history of alternating between the Congress and the BJP in every assembly election since 1982. On November 6th, BJP President JP Nadda, who also hails from Himachal Pradesh, released the party's manifesto promising implementation of the Uniform Civil Code, 33% reservation for women in government jobs, and educational institutions and benefits for different segments. He also lauded Chief Minister Jairam Thakur for his governance in the poll-bound state and said that people have trust in the leadership of the CM and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. While the assembly polls in Himachal will be held in a single phase on November 12th, the election for Gujarat is scheduled for December 1st and 5th. The counting of votes in both states will take place on November 8th.
Indian Finance Minister Sitharaman will meet investors from the US to pitch India as an option to diversify their production bases beyond China.
Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be meeting two sets of investors over the next few days to pitch India as an attractive investment destination and also seek inputs to improve the overall climate. The ministers will be meeting unicorns and other startups in Bengaluru and US investors at an event where US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will also be present. In recent weeks, the Indian government, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as Sitharaman, have sought to suggest that India was an island of calm during a phase of global uncertainty and an option that investors can look at as they diversify their production bases beyond China. Several manufacturing companies, including contract manufacturers for Apple, have already invested in India with the production-linked incentive scheme expected to further boost investments in the country. While the developed economies in Europe and the US have been hit hard by the spike in inflation to the highest level in 4 decades, and growth has collapsed due to an increase in interest rates, India is projected to be among the fastest growing major economies this year, with the outlook for next year being optimistic, although some slowdown is expected. India has made a concerted effort to explain its position to investors and also tell them that it did right following the outbreak of COVID in early 2020 amid pressure from experts to loosen purse strings and hand out doles to everyone.
Tata's Nelco, in collaboration with Telesat, has applied for a license to offer satellite broadband services in India.
The Tata Group satellite communication service provider Nelco has applied for a license with the Department of Telecommunications to offer satellite-based broadband services in India. The company will provide the services in collaboration with Canada-based satellite operator Telesat. To provide satellite-based communication services including internet broadband, companies need to get a global mobile personal communication by satellite license from the government. Nelco with Telesat is a fresh applicant for the GMPCS license, and the government has sought more details from the company regarding their plans. Application from Nelco comes days after Elon Musk's SpaceX-owned Starlink applied for the license to offer satellite communication services in India. A GMPCS license will help the companies offer voice and data services through satellite. The license is issued for a period of 20 years, allowing firms to offer satellite communication services in licensed service areas. At present, the government has issued licenses to Bharti Group-backed OneWeb and Jio Satellite Communications, a unit of Reliance Jio, to offer satellite-based internet services. Nelco becomes the fourth player in the satellite communication segment that will offer broadband services in the country. In April, Nelco and Telesat conducted a first in-orbit demonstration of high-speed broadband connectivity in the country using the latter's low Earth orbit satellite.
Winter has arrived in the Himalayas in India. Fresh western disturbance is likely to bring more snowfall and rains in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Ladakh.
The Indian Meteorological Department on November 7 predicted that a fresh western disturbance is likely to affect the western Himalayan region from November 9th. As autumn gives way to the winter chill in the air, causing a slight dip in temperatures, the weather department has informed us that several areas in the Himalayan ranges are likely to receive snowfall. These areas include Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand and Ladakh. The meteorological department forecast a 5-day wet spell of weather in Kashmir ending on November 10th. The weather agency also warned that a low pressure area is likely to form over the southwest Bay of Bengal of the Sri Lanka coast around 9th November. It is very likely to move northwestwards towards the Tamil Nadu-Puducherry coast with possible slight intensification during the subsequent 48 hours. Moderate rainfall or snowfall is also likely to occur over Uttarakhand on 7th November and during 9th to 10th November.
The start of tourism season season in India's pristine Kashmir Valley began with thousands visiting the Union Territory to witness the magical autumn season in Kashmir.
India's magnificent crown jewel, the picturesque Kashmir Valley, has been splashed with the color red in the autumn season. It's a magical change that thousands of tourists from across India and the world come to witness. The colorful chinar or the maple trees are a sight to behold for tourists. As the season changes, thousands of tourists are thronging the valley in whichever way they can. It has given a good boost to tourism in the region after 2 years of COVID pandemic restrictions. Some of the tourists visiting have just read about autumn and have never seen it. The rest of India does not have 4 seasons like the Kashmir Valley. The world-famous Mughal gardens of Kashmir have a red carpet spread of the chinar trees with a background of Zabarwan Hills. The Nishad Garden, Shalimar Bagh, Naseem Bagh and Chinar Bagh are witnessing a huge rush of tourists enjoying these beautiful visuals and taking photos in these breathtaking beautiful locations. The government has also announced unique festivals for the tourists coming to the valley during the autumn season. Tourists have been quoted saying that visiting Kashmir is a superb experience personally after watching its beauty on the celluloid in Bollywood films. Autumn is one of the most favorite seasons for Bollywood filmmakers to shoot their movies in the valley, and that's why one can find over a dozen film crews shooting various projects in the valley these days.
OTT platform Disney Plus Hotstar has released a teaser for the thriller Freddy starring Kartik Aaryan.
Eyes have been on Kartik Aaryan ever since the first look of his upcoming movie Freddy was released. Now the teaser film has been released. The actor will be seen in a never-seen-before character and he surely looks quite intense. Directed by Shashank Ghosh, the teaser shows Freddy played by Kartik, a regular guy, transforming into an extraordinary character in the narrative. The plot revolves around Freddy and a married woman, Kainaz, played by Alaya F, who falls in love. However, Kainaz's husband is abusive and Freddy discovers an unusual way to marry her, but there is a twist that turns his life upside down. We have seen Kartik Aaryan playing a lover boy, a best friend, an intense reporter and a funny guy, but this will be the first time when we would see him playing a psychotic character. It has never been an easy job for any actor to convincingly play a character that would give us goosebumps and get all the fans on the edge of their seats. But Freddy's character proves his versatility. The teaser shows different shades of Kartik, with each being completely different from another. Freddy will release on Disney Plus Hotstar on December 2nd.
That's all for this bulletin of the Daily India Report.
And thank you very much for that report, Ankita. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's take a look at some of the functions and events taking place right here in Brisbane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on the 9th of 11 here in Brisbane, 22 degrees and partly sunny. Well, it doesn't look like a very bad day out there. Looking out the window here is just amazing. Well, right now it's time to say goodbye until our next segment, which will be at 10 a.m. with the weekly real estate update with Usha Chandra. Up till then, it's goodbye from us.